Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to another video. My name is Amir, and today I am joined with Musa Salar. He is my junior at the Khan University. He is a first-year medical student, and he recently got admitted. And Musa, if you want to do a little bit of introduction about yourself, you can do it now.
Okay. Yeah. Hello, guys. My name is Musa Salar. I am an O26, so I'm MBBS class of 2026 at Khan University. We just joined like 2 months back, and I did high school from Cadet College Hassan Abdal, which is also in Hassan Abdal, and I was an FSC student. So in Hassan Abdal we have the Rawalpindi boards, and Rawalpindi board is like a part of the Punjab board basically, and I got around 95% in my SSC exams, so like metric exams, and I was around 90% in my FSC exams. I'm also a re-applicant in the sense that I applied last year, but I was unable to get in even in the entry test. And I applied it again this year, and this year, alhamdulillah, I got in, and now I'm a part of the class of 2022-26.
All right, that's amazing. So Hassan Abdal, Rawalpindi board, which is part of the Punjab board, and you are a re-applicant like me. All right, so moving on with the video. So we talked about Musa's introduction, and I think now I can begin with the video topic, and that is the AQU entry test. And I'll begin with the paper pattern. So like last year, like the same paper Musa took last year, there will be 100 questions in total, 20 questions per section. That is 20 for bio, 20 for chemistry, 20 for physics, 20 for science reasoning, and 20 for math reasoning. And there will be negative marking in the science part, and no negative marking in the reasoning part. And I think the total duration of the paper is 2 hours. Yes, 2 hours is the total duration. And that's about it with regards to the paper pattern, right? Okay, and moving on from that, my question for Musa now is, how did you think studying for the AQU test, because you had to study for the AQU test and the MDCAT, right? So how were you able to, how did you manage that? Or did you think studying for AQU test, or did you think studying for the MDCAT complemented one another? What was your thought on that?
Okay, so I basically applied in 2 cycles, right? So I took the MCAT twice as well and the AQU twice as well test. Yeah. So in both cases, I would say that it does complement, like the fundamental concepts are the same, but you could say the way the fundamental concepts are tested across both the subject, both the papers, like both the exams, is completely different. So if you look at the MCAT or the MDCAT, it takes a huge load of its questions come from like general knowledge about things, right? That you know things, and not necessarily how they would apply in a particular context, right? So if we have a question, say on genetics, they would just ask you, okay, which statement explains the first law of Mendelian genetics, and you have like 4 options, right? But something on the AQU test would be, there's this question, or uske andar Mendelian, the first law of Mendel's genetics is being applied, like the law of inheritance, right? Yeah. So wo udhar apply ho raha hoga. So if you know it correctly, you would be able to apply it correctly, and therefore get the right answer out of it. So AQU ka jo paper hai, it is a bit more application, and not just the knowledge of it. So I think that's a crucial difference. Baki, the fundamental concepts are the same. If you study for one, it's gonna complement your preparation for the other one.
Agreed. Yeah, I think if the viewers watch our previous videos, a lot of people always says that mitochondria is mitochondria. Like law in federal board is the same in A levels, is the same in SAT books, is the same in Punjab board, is the same in Sindh board, right? Yes, which these hoga, there's a difference in what's in the textbook, but the core fundamental basics is the same. So yeah, that's like you said it really well. All right, so before I talk about the individual subject, I just wanted to ask you a thing. So the entry test is, as of now, as of recording this video today, is scheduled to take place on July the 24th of 2022. All right. So it is right now the end of March, 30th of March. They have the whole of April, the whole of May, June. They have, and then basically the whole of July. Students have their exam in May, June. Do you think do you think the students should be studying right now, or did you start studying after you took a gap year, so maybe it was a little bit different for you, but if you were to recommend a junior, would you say they should start studying ABISE alongside their board exams, or do you think they should do it after their board exam because they might have about a month time to prep? When do you think would be the right time?
So there's two things that you need to look at when you talk about कि आप कितनी जल्दी तैयारी करनी है, right? So the first thing is priorities, right? तो आपकी क्या priority है at this time, ठीक है? If your priority is कि मैंने AQ में होना ही होना है, मैंने कुछ भी हो जाए, मेरी first priority मैंने AQ जाना है बस, ठीक है? In that case, overkill is underrated, ठीक है? जितनी जान मार सकते हो, जितना पढ़ सकते हो, अभी पढ़ लो. You get one shot at this. Second shot के time पे बंदा थोड़ा सा slightly discouraged, but if you can get in during the first attempt, get in the first attempt. So in that sense, I would say कि if you're doing, say for example, FSC, right? So FSC की किताबें आप पढ़ रहे हो, get a hold of A-levels books, find them online, find them through some other source, maybe buy them, ठीक है? और अगर आपके स्कूल में A-levels वाले बच्चे हैं, क्योंकि some schools are like that, तो get those books from them, ठीक है? Just जो चीजें आप इधर से पढ़ रहे हो ना FSC की किताबों से, वही चीजें आप पढ़ लो A-levels की किताबों से. Similarly, अगर आप A-levels के लड़के हो और लड़की हो, ठीक है, तो you do the same with FSC की किताबें. Fundamental concepts are the same, but slight variation in definition, slight variation in content, ठीक है.
Yeah.
For example, Hall effect जो है वो FSC में नहीं है, ठीक है. This is one thing that I remember very very clearly क्योंकि हमारे टेस्ट में भी आया था. So Hall effect is not in FSC की किताबें, and similarly कोई इसी तरह की चीज A-levels की किताबों में नहीं होगी. But more or less, if you can complement it with other systems, like अगर आप A-levels के हो तो पिंडी बोर्ड ट्राई कर लो, सेंट बोर्ड ट्राई कर लो, try SATs, ठीक है, SAT subject test basically. तो if you can complement it और जितना जल्दी कर सकते हो, I mean, more practice would translate into a better result.
Agreed. So, yeah, obviously, the quicker you do it, don't cram it for the last moment. Like the earlier you do it, again, it depends on your priorities. If AQ is like your number one priority, you should maybe do it ABISE. And if you're like, okay, a little bit, if you have a little bit of second thought about AQ to prepare, maybe you might want to focus more on your MDCAT and more on your board exam, because that counts a lot more for government colleges and other university. So AQ you just need to pass your MCAT, and you just need to get, I think, 70% in your FSC, and that's more than enough for getting into AQ. AQ method, you have to pass the AQ test, you have to do good in your interviews and get a little bit of extracurricular, and then you getting in. So yes, depends on your priority. If AQ is your number one priority, then yes, you should start right now, considering the exam is in July, the end of July. All right, so let's now move on to the subjects. People always want to hear that. So let me bring up how you brought up in the beginning that you are from a Punjab board. You are a Punjab board student. The AQ entry test is, some would say, federal based. The MDCAT, people argue, and PMC says it's universal, sabke liye aasan hai. But I think the student consensus is that the MDCAT was more federal based than it was any other base. So let's begin with biology. How were you able to study biology? What books did you study? And did you pick up another book? And what resources, what YouTube videos or anything would you recommend for biology?
Okay. So the first thing you should start with is, your own type of curriculum. So for example, if you're A-levels, so obviously you start with अपनी A-levels की किताब and you go on from there, ठीक है? तो अब AQ का टेस्ट is somewhat के उन्होंने कोशिश इस तरह की है कि you make it unbiased के सारे systems को equal chance मिले of doing good at it. Say for example अगर आप FSC के हो or you did at Excel or you did A levels जो भी है, ठीक है. So in that case, in order to be more holistically prepared, it's better कि आप जो अपने system में कर रहे हो उसके अलावा आप you adopt other systems too. So for biology, I would recommend कि you go through Rawalpindi text board की book once, ठीक है. You go through syntax board की book once, ठीक है. You go through federal की textbook board की किताब as well, and if you go through SAT too, ठीक है, SAT to bio, ठीक है, and उसके अंदर EM दोनों करने हैं, ठीक है. E is ecology, M is I think genetics, कोई इस तरह का होता है, molecular bio, ठीक है. You do both of them and you do A levels की books. So these are the 5 or 6 things that you can do potentially, and out of those 5 or 6 things, I think the highest yield would be of SATs, like SAT 2s, ठीक है.
Okay.
So and I think like AKU EB papers, so AKU Educational Board जो है उसके जो papers हैं, they're also highly relevant. I have seen people के जिन्होंने who have made comparisons के how AKU का test is similar to AKU EB का test, and since the same entity is making it, so it's possible that there's an overlap, right? I've also heard some students talk about there's notes and questions by Anis Hussain. Apparently it's also a resource that I've heard people use. I used it too, I didn't quite like it, but then again if you want to practice, do that too. I would say अगर आप FSC के student हो, definitely do SAT 2s, और अगर आप A levels के student हो, definitely do at least one board of FSC, ठीक है. तो either Sindh or Punjab or federal, and in तीनों में से भी if you want to do one board, ठीक है, if you have time for one board, do federal, क्योंकि federal board. So federal has like it increases your chances at of getting a good score at MDCAT, MCAT, and as well as also increases your as well as AQ. और उनकी किताबें are अच्छी, like the National Book Foundation books are actually very good books. मतलब I would say कि out of Sindh, Punjab,
अच्छे quality के books हैं ना,
even
like,
KB, yeah.
That's what everybody says.
So,
जो book, the actual physical book, it's like अच्छे books, good books. You like reading it.
Yeah. So I did Sindh की books, I did Punjab में मतलब Punjab board की books, I did KP के board की books too, क्योंकि well I'm from KP के, तो मैंने उस bias को भी देखना था कि हमारे ज़माने में ETA होता था, ठीक है. तो ETA was replaced by MCAT in my year, right? तो मैंने KP के भी books दी थी, and I also did federal. So I was completely overkill when it came to AKU. I was like, मैंने होना ही होना है, I'm gonna do everything in my power to make that happen. And I would say that if I had to choose one, I would go for federal, ठीक है, क्योंकि now that increases your chances aggregate सबसे ज़्यादा. Yeah. And if possible, there is also another resource that I've heard of. There is papers of A O levels के लिए होता है this
red spot.
Red spot के जो MCQs हैं, practice those, and those are very application based, but I would say they're more difficult than the ones that you encounter in AKU test. They're much more difficult, but if you're able to do that, मतलब time है तो take a shot at it too.
Yeah, so like abhi considering abhi there's still a lot of time left, right? So if you have the time, what you recommend is, if you want to narrow down from all the FSC textbook, you would recommend the federal board books, the National Foundation, NDF, I think is whatever the publisher's book.
If you're from A levels.
If you're from A levels. Okay. Yes. If you're from an A levels background, if you want to narrow down to one book, then the federal. And if you're from an FSC background, do your own board, obviously, logically. And then, in addition to that, do SAT, which is must. Yeah. So I think both ways, SAT is a very good resource. All right, so let's move on to chemistry now. So what is the recommendation same for chemistry?
The same recommendation goes for physics and chemistry, but chemistry, so A levels में इतना कुछ नहीं है. FSC books are overkill over there. मतलब FSC books में
They
there's
are.
a lot of reactions in organic that you're not going to encounter in A-levels की किताबें, and similarly there's a lot of stuff in inorganic की chemistry, ये FSC वाले उसमें pattern में that you're not going to encounter in A-levels. तो उसमें I would say कि if you want to know more stuff and if you want to score more in MCAT वगैरह, definitely do FSC का stuff if you're from A-levels. Like FSC kids won't have a big advantage if they do A-levels का stuff because A-levels का stuff is already covered by FSC का stuff mostly. Do the questions like for A-levels की जो चीजें हैं, like if you can do SAT 2 questions or if you can do red spot की questions, very good. But for A-levels, I would definitely recommend that you go through the FSC wala stuff because that has more stuff that you might encounter at AKU ka test, and you might not have, studied that in A-levels, and you can study that, you can prepare for that by doing FSC ki kitabin.
Yeah. Agreed. A-level is very, very watered down. बहुत ही आसान है comparatively. I remember back when I studied, like even what was that? Elimination reaction and the substitution reaction or something.
Base substitution reaction.
हाँ वो पूरा topic ही नहीं है A-levels में, and FSC में, because I studied the SIN board books, right? Because उस वक्त there was the SIN MCAT, the NTS. So it was a little bit different and it was a lot harder in SIN. But yeah. All right. So chemistry, you would recommend the same, what we just talked about, and for physics as well. Physics, you would recommend if you are an A-level student, you should definitely do the federal board books and do the SAT books. And I think as someone who's done A-levels, I think the SAT book is a very perfect transitional book to the FSC book, because the books itself are the English itself, the book itself, the content itself is very easy, and it's more in par with the A-level textbooks, right? So it's you're not jumping from two extremes. You're jumping to the middle, which is the SAT books. So per SAT, say you jump to the FSC book, which is like the extreme opposite of your A-levels book. So as a transitional book, I think as an A-level student, everybody should definitely check out the SAT books if they haven't already, and then obviously do the federal board books, because federal board books, whether you are applying to AQ, whether you get into AQ or not, you have to take the MDCAT, and obviously you should try getting the best score in your MDCAT. Isliye the federal board books will help you the most. And if you're an FSC student, watching this video, Musa, you recommend students again do SAT books, right? For biochem physics, and uske ilawa, okay, for example, if somebody's from SIN board, what would you still recommend the federal board books, because you've been through this?
I would still recommend federal board ki kitab. Yeah.
Okay, and if someone
federal
from,
board
for example,
wali kitab is, yeah.
So if someone's from, like, for example, KPK, KPK board.
So KPK and federal are similar at a much greater level than SIND and federal. So KPK ki books are pretty good too. But compared to federal board, I would still say federal board zyada achhi hai. But compared to SIND, do go for federal. If you're KPK, not as much, but kar lo to achhi baat hai. There's that. Or chemistry and physics are like much more, problems and equations based than bio. So bio is more information based, right? In that case, you have a bias towards FSC ki kitabein, more knowledge, more text, more definitions, more terms, and all of that. Okay? And in chem and physics, even though more reactions in FSC, but I would say that questions you should do them from A-levels, because A-levels ke questions they're very nicely designed and they really test your concepts. Same goes for physics. I would say that FSC ki kitabein and FSC ki questions and FSC ke banks, the questions created out of FSC ki kitabein, they do not have the same level of, the same, utne achhe nahi hote with respect to, testing your skills and testing your knowledge and your understanding and your application than A-levels ke sawal. So A-levels ke sawal you should definitely do for chem and physics.
All right, that makes sense. So by A-level sawal, you mean red spot? there's this publisher
Yeah,
called
Red
Red Spot.
Spot and SAT
Yeah,
book.
so Red Spot books are available any bookstore probably at this point. I know Karachi mein to har gali ke bookshop mein there you can find Red Spot past papers, and if not you can find online past papers, and you can go to the P1 ASP1 for the biochemical physics. वो paper मिल जाता है if you want to practice. So that's that. And what about now? Let's move on to the next part of the AQ interest, and that is the science reasoning. So science reasoning mein, what did you do? Because there is no one textbook you can do science reasoning from. It's like whatever.
Yeah, so I was just looking at the questions, the bank I created last year. Paper exam khatam hua tha, so we created a bank like kya questions aaye the, right? And I was just looking at it, so there is no one size fits all wali idhar koi cheez ke like aap ek cheez karoge to bas ho jayega. Some questions are you won't be able to distinguish कि यार ये तो direct chemistry का सवाल है या ये तो direct physics का सवाल है. आप बोलोगे
ये तो direct math के सवाल है science reasoning में.
हाँ, या ये तो direct math का सवाल है. तो वो थोड़ा mixed type का होता है, like you can expect anything, ठीक है? But as a general वो I think you should do combined sciences. मतलब जो O levels में होता है, if you can do that, not really necessary. मतलब give it a shot. I gave it a shot. ठीक है? Brush up your skills. ये physics and bio की, ठीक है? Science reasoning you would mostly have covered. ठीक है? And if you're able to understand the question, वो भी बहुत application based होता है ना, and it's everyday science kind of stuff. ठीक है? So I would say if you use logic and if you use like if you're like analyzing the question really well, I would say you don't need a lot of knowledge to solve those questions. You just need some
sense.
Logic to it. मतलब थोड़ा sense चाहिए होता है, and it's not that difficult. ठीक है? बाकी do read the scientific method like depths में कि how it's done, like how our studies designed. So like research design, if you can read about it a bit. अब जो topics मेरे ज़हन में आ रहे हैं, scientific method a bit थोड़ा बहुत पढ़ लो कि like details में कि how does it happen. ठीक है? Research के बारे में थोड़ा बहुत पढ़ लो कि like how would you do a clinical trial, for example, कि like आप intervention करोगे, ठीक है? एक में वो चीज़ नहीं होगी, एक में वो चीज़ होगी, placebo क्या होगा, and how would it logically test कि like आपने causality किस तरह टेस्ट करनी है कि ये चीज़ cause कर रहे हो तो इसकी वजह से ये चीज़ हो रही है, ठीक है? That kind of stuff. So do a bit of research design, ठीक है? And do a bit of, if you can get an everyday science की किताब, given that you have time right now, ठीक है? If you can get an everyday science की किताब, maybe do that. That's probably going to help you. Okay. There is no one size fits all, so matlab do that. Also, there used to be IKSC, International Kangaroo Science Competition, ठीक है? Maybe try that, ठीक है? क्योंकि I have seen कि IKNC के सवाल or that kind of सवाल at least appear in the math reasoning वाला. So it's possible कि IKSC type के सवाल would appear, मतलब I can't vouch for it कि मैंने नहीं किए हुए, लेकिन I would say कि that is one potential resource you can explore and see if it works for you, right? Okay. So yeah, definitely go for that. And some people also recommend me कि there is something like clinical skills, not clinical skills, research skills in A levels, कोई इस तरह का एक paper होता है, that kind of thing, ठीक है? Yeah, and someone recommended me that too. I'm not sure what it's exactly called. I did that too. Okay. I'm not sure actually about it. Lekin that is also one potential resource that people highlighted to me. And yeah, that's pretty much it for science reasoning.
So to summarize, I think what you said, there is once again, there's no one size fits all solution to this science reasoning. It's very, very random. What the questions you were tested versus the question I was tested versus the question what the O25s were tested would be like completely different. So as from what we saw, what we remember, I think we, like Musa recommended the kangaroo questions perhaps. I always recommend as a reference, if you want to know what kind of questions they ask, not necessarily which, like I wouldn't say kangaroo questions are the best representative of the questions they ask, but a good sort of baseline. If you want to make a baseline, okay, इस तरह के riddle type questions पूछते हैं, तो okay, then go for kangaroo question. But then again, if you apply a little bit of your mind, a little bit of logic, a little bit of common sense, a little bit of science here and there, a little bit of math, then 20 questions, there's no negative marking. You will eventually, hopefully, inshallah, pass. If you have like decent scores in your metric and your FSC, I think everybody does really good. Hopefully, it's always the math part that people screw up. So on that note, let's move on to math right now. So math is probably people's worst fear in the AQ entry test. People, especially like I took math in my A level, so I didn't even study for math. Some people, I guess FSC mein you don't take math in pre-med, isliye people haven't studied math for the past 2 years, isliye they're like, oh shit, how am I going to do this, right? And the last time they studied math was back in metric, right, which was over 2 years ago at that point when they're taking the entry test. So you were probably at the same stage. What was your go-to book? How did you do it? Did you take the SAT? Did you study the SAT SAT1 books, or did you go through the A levels, or what was your solution for math?
I think the most relevant resource that you can get on that is the SAT1, right? So SAT1 can be, there's things that you can do. Okay, SAT1 is actually more developed than SAT2 in terms of resources, right?
Yeah.
So SAT2 is easier, SAT1 is harder to score on, so there's more resources that cracking it. So there's Dr. Jang, there's the Black Book, then there's College Panda, okay? And there's Baranski SAT, there's Princeton Review, okay? So 5 different ones that you can do for SAT1. You can see the one ke kaun si aapke liye kaam kar rahi hai. I would say College Panda, Dr. Jang, Black Book are all pretty good, okay? Most people go for Barron's. I wouldn't recommend Barron's. I would recommend Barron's is बहुत ज़्यादा. Barron's के अंदर बहुत सी ऐसी चीजें हैं that you're not gonna. Yeah, Barron's के अंदर बहुत सी ऐसी चीजें हैं that you're not gonna encounter on like the AKU test, ठीक है? Princeton Review, yes, you can go for it. Princeton Review सही है. So you use these 3, and the thing about math is कि practice things. Do not just read maths. I've seen people read math की किताबें and think, oh, we're gonna get through the AKU test और हम लोग सवाल कर लेंगे. You make very simple, basic किस्म के problem. You make very simple, blunders on the paper. Plus minus की आपकी गलती हो जाती है, brackets की गलती हो जाती है, ठीक है? Be careful about that because आपने 2 साल में नहीं किया होता वो, ठीक है? You have forgotten, simple exponent के rules या फिर things like that. Especially about maths वगैरह आप भूल जाते हो, exponent के rules भूल जाते हो, ठीक है? And you're gonna encounter that on the paper, ठीक है? और algebra होता है, I would say कि there's algebra, ठीक है? There's stuff related word problems नहीं होते जिस तरह word problems के someone had this many clothes and this much time to do that, तो अगर x number of clothes in this much time, तो what would be the number of clothes अगर इतना time है? या फिर if you're hanging clothes तो आपके पास इतने catchers हैं, ठीक है? तो how many would that take, ठीक है? Brush up थोड़ी बहुत probability, ठीक है? थोड़ी बहुत probability, थोड़ा बहुत algebra, definitely exponents, definitely BODMAS, definitely a bit of geometry, ठीक है? कि complementary angles, supplementary angles, ठीक है? वो triangles के जो वो होते हैं कि side angle side, angle, congruency वगैरह, ठीक है? थोड़े बहुत circle के formulas, rules जो होते हैं, ठीक है? The typical things that you can find in the SATs, definitely do that. उसके अलावा I would say अगर बहुत time है और if you want to overkill that, go for Khan Academy, ठीक है? अगर कोई चीज नहीं, you can just do the practice questions. topic खोलो, algebra का topic खोलो, 10th grade का, या फिर you just go to algebra, ठीक है? Khan Academy में, and do the questions. अगर आपको समझ आ रही है, if you can do it, then you can do it. या फिर do SAT के questions. If you can do it, then you can do it. If you can't do it, go through the पीछे जो resources हैं, the chapter where they explain, algebra, ठीक है? और उसके अंदर जो कुछ explain हुआ है. And math is a lot about where you're messing up, ठीक है? If you can correct where you're messing up, then you just get it, ठीक है? If you can't find it, अगर आप randomly एक ही चीज पर गलतियां कर रहे हो, you fundamentally do not understand something about it, ठीक है? और maths में again there is a lot of logic लगानी होती है, sense लगाना होता है, क्योंकि उसके अंदर भी बहुत से ऐसे questions होंगे that you can't directly it might not necessarily involve an equation, ठीक है? And बहुत से मैंने questions देखे थे which were the riddle type questions. ठीक
Yeah.
है? So, say for example, जिस तरह के वो नहीं होते, like the ones that you can find on Facebook. कि, oh, there's
Yeah,
3
exactly. I
bananas
was going
equal
I was going to bring
30.
this up. So I
Yeah,
remember
things like that.
Usman Ansari when I made a video, hopefully it's in a playlist in this channel. Usman Ansari, I made a video, a drive with me wala video. Usman and Umar. Us video mein Usman said one word where it's those WhatsApp, Facebook wala riddle where, for example, if an orange represents 2 and if an apple represents 4, if there's 5 oranges and 3 half of apple, what's the total number? Is तरह के bullshit Facebook wala questions aate hain at times, and it gets really like funny at times and really fun to solve. Yeah, but like you were saying, they were riddles basically.
Yeah, उस तरह के riddles, and also do profit loss, वो amount, percentage interest, ठीक है, principal interest वाले जो होते हैं, those things are also, मतलब I've seen those in the exam too. ठीक है, उसके अलावा I think you're good to go. Like if you have that covered, अगर आपका sense ठीक है, if you're not making the fundamental stupid mistakes, जो मतलब you're ignorant to them, कि मतलब आप कर देते हो और बाद में आपको realize होता है, oh यार I should have been careful, ठीक है. So if you're not doing that, if you have some practice, I think you can go through it. Yeah.
Agreed. So like that was math, right? So math mein it's again, if like I didn't study math. I didn't even study for math reasoning, and because I was blessed in the fact that I was always, for the past 2 years before my AQ entry test, I was constantly doing math, right? So I was very sharp. I knew my fractions, I knew my ascending, descending order, I knew decimals, I knew how to add, subtract, multiplication, division, all of that, probability, that was all easy for me, right? And that's, they only ask the basic. They're not going to ask you to differentiate an equation, or they're not going to ask you to integrate an equation. It's the mushkil calculus wala questions nahi aate. It's very simple, whatever questions, like Musa mentioned, right? So do the basics, know the basics, revise on your basics, solve the basics, and hopefully you can do it. Like for example, like another I think question, like pie chart mein, if there is a pie chart, and if the angle of a certain sector is 40% or something, and if there's 500 people, how many people does that section of the pie chart represent? So that's easy. 40 upon 360 multiplied by 500, right? They can, like, you need to know the logic behind that, and you can't just learn that. You gotta know, okay, why does that make sense? And it's very, very basic type shit that comes up in the math portion. And I don't think I brought this up in this video before, but then let me go. Let's. So the cutoff last year was 60%. For the reasoning and for the 2 reasoning. So if there were 40 MCQs, you needed to get a 24 out of, I did the math, 24 out of 40 to pass, to get into AQU. And for the other part, it was a 57%. And that is out of 0.57 multiplied by 60 MCQ. That is 34 MCQs. You needed 34 MCQs out of 60 to get in. And that's factoring in the negative marking in the science part. All right, so we can now, I guess, hopefully conclude with the video slightly. So before I finish the video, I just want to ask Musa one last question, and that is, where did you go to an academy? Did you in your hometown, or did you think you needed to go to academy if you didn't go, or if you went to an academy, did you think it was necessary? And now that you've been in AQ, I'm sure you've interacted with people. What do you think? Like, do you think a lot of people went to academy in your batch? What's the trend? What's your thought on all this academy?
Okay, so since I was part of 2 applicant cycles, the first time around I did go to an academy. The second time around I did not. And well, the second time around I got in. But you should not use that to attribute कि like academy जाने से बंदा नहीं होता और ना academy जाके बंदा होता है, ठीक है? It goes both ways, and if you just take my example, that's too less of a sample size, right?
Yeah.
So the general trend that I've seen is कि हमारे बैच में बहुत से लोग academy जाते हैं, ठीक है? There is a very popular academy in Karachi as well. It's called Wizard or something, ठीक है? और
Wizard,
उससे every year,
Dr. Sharma.
yeah, I think, yeah, 25 students every
That's
year
amazing.
they come to AKU, and something like 35 students clear the entry test, right? So मतलब academy definitely helps over there. And बाकियों में भी मैंने ये note किया है कि like if you have been through the academy, there's chances कि like you're gonna get it, ठीक है? मतलब it does help, ठीक है? On a second note, मतलब उसके अंदर जो एक further आपको बातें पता होनी चाहिए, that is कि अब MCAT जो आया है, like you know the national curriculum वाला, उसमें there's not a lot of you know shortcuts and stuff, ठीक है? But ETA for example जब होता था या फिर जब पंजाब वाला टेस्ट होता था, तो there's specific shortcuts that are taught in these academies that you can use to you know solve those questions in less time as compared to like आप पूरा formula use करो. So for example, one popular thing that you know I have seen my teachers teach me was कि अगर आपके पास pi square है and if you have gravity नीचे, ठीक है? मतलब आप कोई इस तरह की equation कर रहे हो, अर्थ का circumference निकालना है, कोई gravity निकालनी है, और आपके पास fraction में ऊपर pi square है और नीचे gravity है, ठीक है? So you don't calculate pi square and then you know try to you know divide it with gravity 9.81. You just cross pi square with gravity क्योंकि वो दोनों तकरीबन 9.81 आते हैं. Similarly, there's also formulas for कि like अगर जाते हुए ये velocity है और आते हुए ये velocity है, तो average velocity क्या होगी, you know, और Doppler effect है, तो how do you memorize the Doppler effect के 4 या 8 different जो scenarios हैं वो किस तरह आप याद करोगे, या वो lift वाला scenario कि like मतलब lift के अंदर नीचे accelerate करिए, lift ऊपर accelerate करिए, तो आपके ऊपर apparent weight क्या आएगा, ठीक है? So there's very specific things that are tested in your you know entry test and stuff, जिनके बारे में defined shortcuts हैं that only the academies know, और वो आपको mainstream आपके teachers नहीं पढ़ाएंगे. You can't find that on Khan Academy and stuff, ठीक है? और in SAT की किताबें आए थे, ठीक है? क्योंकि they're very specific to आपका entry test. Now since the entry test का pattern has changed to the MCAT, और MCAT में ये चीज़ें मेरा ख्याल entry test नहीं हो रही, it's more knowledge based. I would still say कि ये like do the academy क्योंकि well you need less time to solve a question, right? मतलब you're still getting something out of it. तीसरी बात ये academies give you a lot of self discipline कि like there's a certain number of hours कि you're committing, yeah. There's a certain number of yeah मतलब आपने you've given the money, now you're like अब पढ़ना तो पड़ेगा, हलाल तो करना है मैंने, ठीक है? तो it gives you a lot of discipline कि like मतलब मैं सुबह 8 बजे उठूंगा, मैं academy जाऊंगा, I'm gonna stay there till 1 o'clock, ठीक है? और मेरे 4 lectures होंगे, उसमें मैंने पढ़ना ही है, you know. तो for people who might not feel कि like हम इतने disciplined हैं, go for the academy. But if you look at the arguments against academy, one हो सकता है कि मतलब आपके concepts बिल्कुल fit हैं, ठीक है? And you know stuff, ठीक है? And you have somehow, say for example, notes, or you from the academy, from your seniors, elder brothers, you know, previous applicants, and you have those, you know, key shortcuts जो आपको चाहिए. In that case, अगर आप highly self disciplined हो और आपको पता है कि मैंने एक ही होना है, ठीक है? And you know, you work, you do your own work सही तरह, मतलब you मतलब create time for yourself कि मैंने इसमें पढ़ना ही पढ़ना है. In that case, academy is not necessary for you. मतलब आप अगर आप खुद कर सकते हो, if you are self disciplined and if you can do it yourself, ठीक है? आप अपनी pace पे कर रहे हो, and since you're doing it yourself, there's a so the psychology of it says कि like if you're doing it yourself, so there's a lot of additive processes that are improving the way you learn, ठीक है? तो the science of learning says कि doing things yourself as compared to you know class formats इस तरह के जिसमें 100 बच्चे बैठे हो, सामने एक प्रोफेसर पढ़ा रहा हो और आप बस सुन रहे हो, it's much better कि आप खुद पढ़ो, खुद सीखो, and you know apply it yourself, ठीक है? I would say कोई crash course type की अगर आपको चीज़ मिल जाती है at an academy, go for it still, ठीक है? Then again वही आप पे है कि how much do you want to get into AKU, और मतलब कितने आप passionate हो, and कितना आप risk ले सकते हो, कितना आप risk नहीं ले सकते हो. तो you really need to you know engage with yourself कि what can I do and what can I not do, ठीक है? मेरे concepts I've seen के बहुत से लड़के और लड़कियाँ, ठीक है, their concepts are not that clear, or they get clearer when they go to academies. क्योंकि say for example the teachers at their schools are not that good, maybe, ठीक है? तो a different teacher could maybe explain that thing to you better than the one that you have, ठीक है? तो इस तरह की भी चीजें हो सकती हैं. But by and large I would say academies do help, like academies do help, क्योंकि I mean their basic purpose is to get you to score high in a particular test, right? They've optimized themselves to that function, ठीक है? So do go to academies, but अगर आपको लगता है कि उसके बगैर आप कर सकते हो, ठीक है, just do it. Then again,
so
up there.
but then again, so like academies definitely, I mean, you're paying money for something, a service, so obviously kuch na kuch farak padega, but then like again at the same time but my argument to what you just said is, especially if you're from an A-level background where you know the textbook in FSC, like you for example, you're done with your A-levels, you're studying your A2, your AS, your first year, second year A-levels, and then you suddenly go to an academy where they're bombarding you with FSC. It was, unless you're like a distinction holder, no A-level student can digest that content from a teacher, you know. I went when I did my A-levels back in 2018 when I was applying for AQ for the first time. I did go to an academy. I went and I was like, shit, what am I doing? I'm not learning anything. Her Saturday, Sunday mein jata hu subah. I go sit there for a couple hours and I'm not learning anything because I can't learn anything, because it's like they're throwing me topics. It's like basically what I'm doing in MBBS, where unfortunately AQ, maybe I go to a lecture, I'm like, they're throwing me fact and I don't get anything, because until, for me at least, it was only I can only digest it if I do it myself, right? So I think if you're an A-level student, it gets a little bit difficult at times, considering how different the content is. But on the other hand, if you're an FSC student who is already studying the federal board, right, and who is already familiarized with the book, familiarized with the content, then obviously it will benefit you. It's like just supplementing what you already did, right? So in that sense, definitely it does help. But then at the same time, I'm sure there are viewers here who can't afford it, who don't have the time, transport ka issue hai, this issue, that issue, whatever, parents don't allow, parents think academy mein padhai nahi hota hai, it's just party, whatever. There's many reasons as to why someone might not go to an academy, and like you shouldn't get disheartened. People have succeeded by not going to academy, and people have like not. It goes both ways. So eventually, like Musa said, if you are dedicated, if you have discipline, if you can, then yes, you can do it without academy. But if you think you're lazy, if you need a little bit of push, a little bit of motivation, Husser will cost you about 55-60K for the whole thing. So if you're comfortable with paying that amount, then pay it. It's going to help you. So yeah, it's really hit or miss. Really depends on yourself, I think. Yeah.
On that note, I was actually thinking on the exact opposite, premises as you were. So my thought was, like, say for example, there's an A-level student and he tries to read FSC ki kitabein. Now FSC ki kitabein are very dense, and they're written differently, right? So what if you have difficulty in reading those books, and एक academy में जाके someone would unpack that for you, in ways, right? So I think that's also possible. Like, I'm not sure if you've encountered it. I haven't encountered it. Because was like, well, I was an FSC student. So, but I would say that maybe there's A-levels ke bache who, feel ke it's easier to read those books and to unpack them because वो बड़ी dense किस्म की, different किस्म की होती हैं. ठीक है? And that's how they actually liked going to the academy. So I don't know, the argument goes both ways, but in the general sense, academies do help, but then again, they're not a sure test of getting in. And if you're self-disciplined, you can do it yourself.
Agreed.
There's nothing stopping you.
Agreed, 100%. And academy is cool. It's fun. You get out of that monotonous. I hope that's the right word. Lifestyle of yours. You make new friends, and it's fun. The experience is fun, and in that aspect, and I think another advantage of going to an academy is perhaps getting to know the admission date, the deadlines, filling in the application, attestation, kahan se karna hai, all of that. वो usually help करते हैं, इसलिए it gets that's one added benefit of going to an academy. Okay, so let's conclude the video. Before I end, Musa, do you have any last word, advice, tips in general about the whole AQ test you would want to say to the audience?
Okay, so like first of all, मैं re-applicant हूँ, and you know once you're here, no one cares. Honestly, no one cares कि आप re-applicant हो, आप दूसरे साल है, ठीक है? And it's possible you might even be at an advantage, like you had a year to have a conversation with you that you haven't had in a very long time, क्योंकि आपके पास वो time ही नहीं था, and you were always you know doing some sort of curriculum का काम, FSC, HSSC, you know SSC, or you know A levels or anything other than that, ठीक है? So it does give you like you know maybe you have more clarity that way in a gap year, ठीक है? So there's nothing to be ashamed of. Second time try करते हुए, there's people over here who tried at the third time, ठीक है? So like
Yes.
I mean come on, ठीक है? So it's still worth it, ठीक है? अगर तीसरी दफा लोग अप्लाई करके आ रहे हैं, then it's definitely worth it. I mean the argument must be made that it's that good.
People,
and secondly,
there are like, sorry to cut you off there, but there are people who studied in Western universities in the UK, universities in America, who put a degree, like they've done an undergraduate degree in something, and then they come to AKU, you know, so it's worth it.
Yeah, and people have left some very highly competitive universities in the States and in the UK for Aga Khan. I mean, that also says something about Aga Khan. It does say something about their passions as well, like given that UK mein and you know US mein medicine is a lot longer, a lot more tedious, maybe even more expensive, so but it does say something about you know AKU as a university as well, like they left that for this, thirdly, don't be overwhelmed by you know the AKU test, just give it your best shot, the day you take it, मतलब जिस दिन हो गया उससे अगले दिन you don't have the regret कि like काश मैंने और पढ़ा होगा, मतलब give it your best shot कि you at least कि the day you take it ना, मतलब एक दफा हो गया टेस्ट, you're content कि यार मैं जो कर सकता था मैंने किया है, जो मैं कर सकता था वो मैंने कर दिया, आगे देखी जाएगी, on the date of the test, you know, there's some guidelines where we can cover that later too. Abhi it's more about prep. जितना जल्दी पढ़ सकते हो, जितना ज़्यादा पढ़ सकते हो, उतना अच्छा है, ठीक है? ये time अभी है, the thing about life is कि like you're all in, ठीक है? So why not just do the best thing you can do all the time, ठीक है? So just you know prepare for it. Or if you don't get in the first time around, कोई मसला नहीं है यार, take a year, it's all good. Like if you honestly like Aga Khan that much, definitely take a year, कोई मसला नहीं है, like you won't regret it, you know, coming here a year after that. And thirdly, I would say use as many resources as you can, but then again, you know, don't get it on your nerves. And one of the ways of not getting it on your nerves is to like distribute things, across your schedule, like if you have 3 months, so you could say like 1 month के अंदर मैंने एक दफा सारा कुछ कर लेना है, or maybe in 2 months, and the months that I have left उसमें मैंने सिर्फ revise करना है, या फिर मैंने अभी A levels की तैयारी आ रही है तो मैं A levels के एग्जाम्स के लिए अच्छा पढ़ लूँ, मैं FSC के एग्जाम्स के लिए अच्छा पढ़ लूँ, ताकि उसके बाद जो मेरे पास 1 महीना हो उसके अंदर you know I can completely focus on you know Aga Khan's ND test or MCAT and all of that. ठीक है? And other than that, I would say take care of yourselves, and you know
enjoy the time.
Enjoy the time that you have.
And that's very well said, and I think I'll add a little bit there too. The thing is, we're making this video. Musa will say something else. Last year I made a video with Akmal. Akmal must have said something else. I made a video with Abbas. Abbas ne bhi kuch different things bataya hoga. I made a video back in first year. I must have said something different. Eventually, I think stick to the books, the resources that you are comfortable with. Stick to the things, the teachers or whatever, the YouTube videos, the academy that you are comfortable with, that you are familiar with. Don't watch this video and drastically jump to a completely different method of studying. Do what you were doing, If you've reached this far, you must have done something correct. Isliye you've reached this far. That's why I wouldn't recommend you drastically do something completely different. Do what you're comfortable with. Do what's familiar with you. Do what that is recommended to you by your seniors. If you have a brother, a cousin, a senior in your university, or in your college, ask them for advice in city opinion law, and then hear their perspective as well. Yeah, that's about it. And I think one thing we missed out on is the fact of you talked about Anisusen. They have these booklets where they have a bunch of questions. I think you brought it up in the biology part. There are numerous question banks available, I'm sure. Punjab, I guess there's like KIPS and Karachi mein, there's Dr. Zin, there is Anisusen, there's Husser, Dr. Sham. All of these academies have their own question bank, and I guess, and then there's also Red Spot question banks. And then there is the AQUEB, their question banks as well. Their board exams questions which you can attempt as well. So my point is, do whatever. Just solve questions at this point. Just like go all in for it. Whether you're doing your Red Spot, whether you're doing AQEB, whether even MedAngle, for example. They sponsor the page, but you can find them linked down below. Use our promo code and all of that. Will be used, karo. Nobody's stopping you. Use MedAngle, use Red Spot, use all of this. The point is, do everything. Do as much as you can, because there's no harm in doing as more questions, right? So because eventually AQ ke alawa there's also MDCAT which you have to prep for. So by doing more questions from different resources and different academies, it just helps you overall throughout the whole journey. Yeah. So I think I will end the video there. Musa, thank you so much for being part of this video. And hopefully, whoever's watching this, hopefully next year they will come up to you and get confused between you and your brother. And they're like, okay, I think I saw you in the video, so you're gonna be they're gonna be like all thankful. Yeah. So on that note, I will end the video, and thank you so much.